Hey guys, SickMotion here with the patch 7.14 notes. This is a patch with Kane, I think is how you pronounce his name, Mr. Edgelord. Uh, so that champion's coming out with this patch. I actually had a chance to look more into the champion, the ratios, the finalized kit and stuff just a little while ago actually, and the champion looks really, really fun. Um, I imagine he's going to be banned quite a lot. I didn't actually get a chance to play this champion on the PvE like I normally would with my new schedule, but the champion looks really fun. Um, I think the whole like being able to like switch like what you want to do. From what I looked at, it's kind of like you can assassinate and be super mobile, or you can be sort of more of a bruisery fighter that's good against assassins, but and probably better against tanks than the assassin form, but I still don't think you're going to be in the best position to deal with like a huge tanky frontline team. Um, just with the way that a lot of the damage healing that he does is post mitigation. His ult being pre-mitigation, those are important points on there. I'm not going to really talk too much about him though. Just going to go over the patch. Damage reduction on Alistar's ult is up, as well as you can see how much damage he has reduced for him, and as well as if you're the champion attacking him. Caitlyn, more nerfs here. Growth attack speed stat down. She's still going to be super strong. Like Caitlyn's just really strong. There's a lot of really interesting changes to like sort of tanky top lane champions that have just kind of been left untouched for a very long time here. Cho'Gath's Vorpal Spikes now is an active rather than a passive on your auto that you can toggle. Has a cooldown on it. Gold is down with level. Mana cost at all levels is 30. Has the same base damage as the old Vorpal Spikes, but what it does is it charges up your next 3 autos to launch spikes that damage and slow targets. It's an auto attack reset as well. I'm not sure if it goes on cooldown when you use it or after the last one is used. I'm pretty sure that'll be what the case is. The second option there. But these things do 4% of your target's maximum health plus 0.5% per fee stack with just your basic 6 fee stacks. That's going to be 7% max health damage, so up to 21% if you get all 3 off. He's going to be actually really good at fighting tanks, doing percentage health damage, and his ult doing a big chunk of true damage. They also slow, decaying slow 30 to 50% depending on the level, decaying over 1.5 seconds. So he actually has some built-in CC that's not his knockup and his silence, something that might actually allow you to land that or not have to use it in a quick trade. And it gives 50 extra basic attack range, which can be really annoying when you don't have that extra attack range when you're this big-ass monster and there's a minion in your way. So I think that change is really cool. There's also some just big quality of life changes here. Normalizing on the Feral Scream, so you actually get a 0.2 extra silence at level 1, or 0.1 second, sorry. And the Rupture damage is down slightly. It's down 5 at level 5. I'm not really sure the significance of that, but I guess it is weird that it would go up. Just the way it scales was weird. The last level gave you 60 damage rather than 55. Anyway, the mana cost is 50% less, so it's from 90 to 60. I definitely think Cho'Gath. I think that's a good change from. It's cool, and I think I might actually try it as well. Diana got some pretty big quality of life and playability changes. If you've ever played Diana, she's excessively mana heavy, and if you want to survive early in lane, you usually get a couple levels of your W, or even in the jungle, at least one. That's what your shield is, but it was 60 mana before for the shield it gives you. Now it's 40. It's still the same later on and still scales up to where it was, but early levels of the shield are less mana, so you'll be able to survive easier. Your Q early level is lower cooldown, so you'll be able to farm easier because you just generally don't have a very strong lane phase on her, and it'll help her jungle clear if you're jungling her as well. Her passive no longer grants 20% attack speed at all times, but if you cast a spell, you'll gain 20% attack speed for your next 3 attacks, kind of in the idea that you get your passive in 3 attacks. So you cast a spell, then 3 quick autos to get your passive off. And when that passive procs, you gain mana back equal to 15% of your ability power, which, I mean, it's not like a huge amount, but like with 100 ability power, that's an extra 15 mana that you get back, 200 get 30. You kind of get the picture that where you're not as mana hungry as you were, as well as your E has a basic Thing that scales with it as well, it increases your attack speed bonus to 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. So once you have one level in your E, that 20% attack speed that you were getting from your passive is now 50. It's probably where you're going to leave the E, but onward from there, it'll rather than having it all the time just for farming and whatnot, it'll give you the steroid when you're actually going into fight. I think that's a big, nice change. Fiora lost at max level, still around the same early and mid, but at max level it went from 30% bonus move speed to 50 to 30. So a lot less there. And Grand Challenge no longer grants Duelist Dance movement speed while near the target. So basically you had this movement speed permanently while you were near your Grand Challenge target, which made it really easy to maneuver, which is going to put more emphasis on the phage and actually hitting those points rather than just running around and getting that movement speed for free to hit the points. Garen has a bunch of shifting around in his passive to make it easier to look at. Basically, the big thing from here is your regeneration increases by a lot depending on how low you are. If you're below 25 or 50% of your max health. If you're below 50% of your max health, it's at 16% max health. Basically, it's like the lower you get in lane, the harder you go to trade, you back away, and you don't die from it, then you're going to sustain really hard. It's going to be really hard to finish Garen off if he backs off, giving you that more regen based on how low you did get. There's a damage or a display that shows how much damage you've mitigated with his W, as well as you get 60% damage reduction and tenacity for the first 3/4 seconds, returning to the normal 30% for the remaining duration. So if you time it well, you can actually time it to block like the big damage, and then you kind of have the trailing off effects from there as well. And you just have more damage on your E. So, I mean, he still suffers from everything that he suffered from. You're kind of just buffing what he was already good at. I don't think that's a good fix, but he's in a better spot. Ivern lost half of the range on his W to make a bush. It's a pretty big nerf. Pretty big buff to Rammus. I was playing Rammus. It's really annoying. The self-slow from 60% to 30 is really nice. The self-slow, the biggest thing was you would powerball in, and you would turn on your W too early thinking that you got the taunt off, and you'd be 60% slowed, and you'd never get the taunt out after that. And if you didn't hit it, and you thought you did, like, you got screwed up really hard. I didn't realize defensive ball curl wasn't increasing the size of Iceborne, so that was annoying as well, but that's back. Someone you haven't seen in forever, Singed. Huge base stats increase to 610 health and a huge health growth stat. Reason being here is because they took away the 25% of your mana going to your health pool. So your health will feel about the same, but they gave him a new passive that doesn't suck balls. It's called Noxian Slipstream. When Singed passes within 225 range of a champion, he drifts off of them, gaining 20% bonus movement speed for 2 seconds. This effect has a unique champion cooldown of 10 seconds. I'm assuming you can do that with enemies or your team. So he's going to gain that bonus movement speed. The passive works with his kit. It works with what the champion wants to do. It's a cool idea for a passive. I really like what they did with that there. Poison Trail, a little bit less base damage, but the AP ratio is up by 0.2. So if you get like 1 AP item, you're still going to feel about the same, maybe better. I didn't do the math. Particle size increased to more clearly represent the poison's area of effect, and it no longer visually disappears when you leave enemy vision. So no more of the ooh, it's an outplay if I walk in the bush or if I just tap my poison and it's invisible. No, that's just annoying. So more clarity on that would be nice. This is the biggest change, I think, the biggest buff. Mega Adhesive no longer scales with its slow. It's only 3 seconds rather than 5, but it now grounds units within the puddle. You can still fling them into it to stick them into it, but it grounds them. So think Cassiopeia's W. You can't flash out of it, you can't dash out of it, you're slowed in it, and you can't get out of it. Other than walking, unless you got flung into it, and then you can't even get out of it that way. It has a higher cooldown for its utility, but it goes down to lower, and it has a bit of a lower mana cost. Fling's mana cost early on got reduced because using it in lane is really painful, and your Insanity Poison got its mana cut, as well as getting some stats at the level 2 and level 3 of the ultimate. Overall, Singed, like all of those very positive things for Singed, which means you're going to be playing against more Singed, which is going to be a negative thing for your sanity because he's annoying to play against. Tarek got some kind of cool changes here, a little bit of like confusing. Bravado empowered attacks, instead of reducing your heal, recharge timer by 5 seconds, it reduces the cooldown by 1 second and instantly grants a charge. Rather than getting 3 charges at all ranks, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on your level of the skill. The mana cost is down. It now has a cooldown, and you can't just like use them all at once. There's a cooldown, which is reduced by using your passive. I don't know. Your passive gives you 2 empowered auto attacks, so I'm assuming that each one of those reduces the cooldown, and each one of those gives you a stack. So as long as you're continuing to auto attack, you're going to get a ton of heals off. It doesn't have, it doesn't scale with the base heal anymore. It still has the same ability power ratio. It's no longer out of your bonus health. It's out of your max health, which makes more sense for a support that might not be able to build health early if you're playing him as a support. I was looking at this as like the possibility of playing him top lane. He got higher base mana regen, higher mana regen growth stat. His E got more damage. It's 100 damage more at level 1. That's actually really big. 2-second higher cooldown, but 2-second lower cooldown later on with your passive, reducing that further. Later on, you'll get a lot more stuns off. Stun duration is 1.25 rather than scaling with level. So this kind of might put an emphasis on getting 1 level into your stun and then getting more levels into your heal so you can hold more charges there. I don't know. There's a lot of changes here. It's like it's a lot to like think like what I would want to try out, but I think that looks kind of cool. Like even to try in a solo lane, but I think for support he would be a lot stronger. Yorick's Mistwalkers now apparently will immediately attack upon landing from the jump rather than jerking off or whatever they did before. For whatever reason they didn't do that. They will jump from further. Your graves will despawn. You have to go further from them to despawn, and your ult is a much lower cooldown at level 3, a little bit at level 2. 40 seconds off at level 3 is really big. That's going to be a huge change for him later on in the game, and its base health got increased by 1,000 later on in the game when it's a lot easier to kill. Some mid-season patch things that happened to Zac and Nunu that got nerfed. And onto the items. Thornmail got changed. We'll talk about the Bramble Best first. It's the new item that builds into the Thornmail. It's basically mini Thornmail. It's kind of like Bambi's Cinder to full Sunfire or Cinder Hulk. It's kind of what this is. Double Cloth Armor, 300 gold, gives 35 armor, so you get 5 extra armor for that extra 300 gold. Upon being hit by a basic attack, reflects 20 magic damage, inflicting grievous wounds for 1 second. 1 second is not a long time. It's not going to necessarily block huge amounts of healing or regen. But if you're consistently being attacked by someone who's life stealing, they will be consistently reapplying that to themselves, so it'll be a lot more effective in that situation. Reflecting 20 magic damage is going to be a lot better for dueling. It's kind of reminds me of what the Cinder applied before. And it's also really cheap, builds out of really easy starter back items. You're not going to be like punished for buying a couple cloths if you're having a bad early game. That now builds into the Sunfire, which is one of those. A Warden's Mail is now in the Sunfire. So the Sunfire is basically like a Ghost Blade. Instead of stacking up as many swords as you can, you buy as many fancy vests. And a Ruby Crystal. It's a lot more expensive. You lost 25 armor off of it to gain 250 health. 250 health for the 550 gold, but losing 25 armor, that kind of hurts. Kind of feels bad, man. But I don't know. But upon being hit by basic attack, reflects magic damage which is equal to 25, so you get 5 extra, but 10% of your bonus armor as well, and still inflicts that grievous wounds for 1 second. But it also applies the Warden's Mail attack speed cripple. So getting this in combination with a Randuin's might feel redundant. But you still probably would in a lot of situations. Ancient Coin got a thing where instead of getting that extra elixir to bounce a skill point, and nearby allies gain 8% movement speed moving towards you. So if you're Janna and you're just fast as fuck, people can chase you and you can kind of lead them to safety. I think that's a better change for the supporty item it's supposed to be. And this is what I was saying for so long, why I just swore off the Randuin's, because think about it. It's a Randuin's reduces crit damage. You're not taking much crit damage, and they don't have very high crit chance, save for a few cases like Yasuo or Tryndamere, until later on in the game. Later on in the game, you have more inventory items in your inventory. You have less space to use. You probably want to be carrying our Pink Ward if you're not a noob. Now you have to build this double Ruby Crystal Warden's Mail and then save another 1,100 gold with it, instead of just having it build out of a Giant's Belt like it did before. So now it builds out of a Giant's Belt. Awesome. That's the biggest change here. It got buffed in other ways. It got 50 more health as well, which is why they couldn't make it build out of a giant spell before, because the giant spell actually gave more health than the entire Randuin's. Builds out of a giant spell, a lot more slot efficient, gives you 50 more health. The big thing here is that if you're building a bunch of other shit, like a Thornmail, I guess it gives health now, but like an Iceborne, for example, you build stuff like that and you don't have any health from it, you just want a big chunk of health early, you get that giant spell. Well, that giant spell built into a Rylai's, a Deadman's, a Warmog's. Was there something else? No, a Frozen Mallet. Those were your items. You're not going to want the Rylai's or Mallet on most tanky items, or a tanky champion, so it leaves you with probably going with the Deadman's, because the Warmog's just doesn't feel efficient in a lot of situations. But now it builds out of a giant spell. So it's inventory efficient, but it's also build path efficient that you can adapt and like change it as you go, and I like that a lot. Lethality, some big changes here as well. It grants armor penetration based on your level rather than your target's level. So it rewards you for doing well rather than your champion, the enemy doing well, kind of. And they basically removed all move speed from lethality items other than the Ghost Blade, the passive movement speed, not the active parts of it. And Edge of Night got changed for the better, I think. The new passive on all the lethality is after killing an enemy, your next damaging spell will deal 40 bonus physical damage to all enemies it hits. So I don't really like this passive. It's kind of similar to what it was before, but it's on your spell and to all enemies hit rather than just one. But basically, what it's going to allow you to do is you kill one minion, and then you can AoE down the rest with your spells. You'll do bonus damage, and then you can roam better. So you don't get that movement speed, but you can roam better by clearing waves faster. Poacher's Dirk shares the same thing. I like this a lot. Duskblade now grants cooldown reduction, which is awesome because that's kind of what you want on AD casters. If you're going for like the all lethality build path, Ghostblade, Duskblade, and Edge of Night, you're not getting very much cooldown reduction, but it now grants cooldown reduction, and rather than scaling with your lethality into true damage, it just scales with your level plus 90, doesn't scale off any of your other items, and it just gives you physical damage. So it's no longer true damage, it's physical damage, but it doesn't feel like it's as punishing if you're not building at least another lethality item with it, and I like that a lot. So it can be a standalone item on champions that the Duskblade would actually be really strong on. Not feeling that you have to get like a Ghost Blade first and then build this, and then you're still kind of feeling like you want another armor pen item. I like that a lot. It also slows your target by 99% for a quarter second, so a very brief, quick slow, but it might allow you to reposition a little bit better. And your proc window is an extra second longer. Overall, I really like those changes. The Ghostblade, the Duskblade also lost 10 damage, gained some lethality, and lost some price, and it's the same build path as a Ghostblade. Ghostblade lost 5 damage, gained some lethality. Out of combat movement speed is doubled from 20 to 40, so this will help you roam a lot better. You don't actually have to use the active to go fast. You can use the active when you're in combat because you lose this out of combat movement speed, obviously, when you get into combat. Edge of Night used to give magic resistance. So did Mercskim, so did Maw. Edge of Night now gives health, which I think is a really good addition to it because it fills a niche. You get that shield from it, and you get health from it now, so you don't blow up. Like 250 health doesn't seem like a lot, but when your base health is like sitting around like 1400, that 250 is pretty meaningful. Might make the difference between you living and dying, especially if you're running something like Dangerous Game. No longer grants that out of combat movement speed. Also gives 3 more lethality. The attack damage on it's actually unchanged, and it still gives that spell shield. I like what they did with the lethality items. I think that's cool. You can now smite the medium-sized Krug, basically, if you want to heal. Trundle's Pillar and Ivia's Wall no longer give vision in a bush if you cast them into there. And then this is kind of, I could go over this. Basically, change interactions where abilities override any spell queuing commands instead of forcing the caster to immediately begin basic attacking once it was completed. Basically, it just changes things where once you cast an ability that you would auto normally, but if you cast another ability, like things would get fucky. Kind kind of just the easiest way to put it. They're trying to like normalize that so it's more predictable what's actually going to happen. Ranked flex party restrictions have been reduced a little so that you can queue one tier above and below where you are. So diamonds can queue with platinums and masters, I guess. In flex queue, I don't really like the idea of flex queue, honestly. And I'm not really gonna go over the bug fixes just because I'm actually gonna be streaming here. I supposed to start my stream 3 minutes ago, so I just wanted to get this done. I was a little bit behind today. And pool party chroma is always awesome to have rainbow pool noodles wherever you go. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap this up really quick. Like I said, I'm going to start streaming here. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully, I'm excited about a bunch of the changes to the tank changes. I'm on the edge about the Thorn Mail. I'm super stoked about the Warden's Mail finally getting that change that I've been bitching about for so long. I'm actually kind of not really excited about the Thorn Mail, but the mini Thorn Mail is kind of cool. The Singe changes, the Turek changes, maybe to play in a solo. I'm not sure. The new champion looks like a lot of fun as well. There's some other stuff that I'm missing. There's just a lot of changes here that I'm kind of excited to test out and whatnot. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. As always, hit the like button if you like the video. I read your comments. Rarely reply on YouTube, but I do read the comments. And yeah, I'm still like really busy right now. I'm not really putting up games or anything. I'm kind of just doing like the patch notes and stuff. But I will be in the future more active on YouTube. Even if it's just returning to maybe putting up more of those full game replays. A lot of people think that I just did those videos for YouTube. Those are actually just stream recordings that I just had a game that I played on stream and I just put it on YouTube for anyone who missed it or wanted to watch it again. Hopefully do more of that in the future. But anyway, rambling on here. Gotta go start my stream, guys. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.